Welcome to the Excel Pod. Welcome to the Untied Podcast, Christmas edition, where we unravel the knots of life with faith, wisdom, and encouragement, because together we're here to untie from tradition and embrace truth through powerful Bible teaching. My name is Garrett Bernithi. I'm one of the hosts of this show, along with my very good friend Corey Sawyers, and today we are excited to be with you. We're actually recording this earlier in the week, but this episode will come out on Christmas Day, and so we want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas from us here at Excelsior More, from us here on the Untied Podcast. We are grateful for you as listeners or viewers, and hope that our conversations have blessed you in every way that they can, as we have studied the idea of the blessed man in the Psalms. And so we're praying for everyone's travel and for your time together as a family, and hope that the Lord will bless you tremendously this Christmas season. We're grateful for you, grateful for our time together, and we're going to get this thing rolling and start it off like we normally do with our favorite time of What's Been Cooking, Corey?
Well, the last week, honestly, I haven't cooked a whole lot. We've just been the recipients of a lot of cooking. It's that time of year that's hazardous to a preacher's life whenever all the sweet ladies in the congregation show out. And so we've been gifted Chex Mix and homemade strawberry cake and homemade cinnamon rolls and snickerdoodle cookies, and my favorite of all, we call them Trudy cookies, but chocolate oatmeal cookies, the no-bake chocolate oatmeal cookies. I don't know what most people call them, but we call them Trudy cookies after my mama's cousin. But anyway, lots of that kind of stuff. It's hard as a someone who's trying to do a little better, and I think about in the morning what my sugar level is, and then I forget it all the day long, and and just trying to not offend anyone, because that you don't want to offend anyone, so try to eat a little bit of it all, but at the same time not overindulge too badly.
Man, that's hard.
Yeah.
We had our Christmas party here Saturday night, and we have some just tremendous cooks, and every congregation does. So we're not setting us apart, but we've got some great cooks, and we had everything. We had homemade jalapeno jelly, jalapeno poppers, chicken, of all kinds. Just you name it, it was here. 2 different kinds of sausage balls, and my wife makes the best, I'm very biased of course, but the best Southwest egg rolls, and she made those and some avocado ranch dip. I think that they're better than Chili's by far. And so she made those. She's going to make those for Christmas this week too, which I'm really excited about. Those will kill me, and I would be okay if they did. That's how good they are.
What a good way to go.
Oh man, yeah. Lots of good food and great time. We had a great time at our Christmas party here, and just some dirty Santa and some fun stuff. Nothing too big, and kids had fun and all that. But yeah, lots of food, and then there was still some of that food left over for Sunday. So We've been eating on it, but definitely a good time. So, what are your plans? Is the family coming up to you?
Yeah, we had the boys for Thanksgiving Day, so the way it's all worked out, we get them every other year for Thanksgiving, every other year for Christmas on schedule. So it just will extend. I'd probably rather do with them before Christmas, but of course, with Gordon and Lauren being in school at Bear Valley, we're kind of limited by their schedule, of course.
Sure.
But anyway, they came home, traveled home safely. For anyone that was praying for them, thank you for that. But they traveled home this last weekend to her parents, which they live over in kind of the dividing line between Middle and East Tennessee, and they're going to be there until this Sunday. And they had planned on coming here Saturday, but one of the congregations out that way that supports them asked him to speak on Sunday night. So he's going to preach there Sunday night, and then they're going to head our way, and they'll be here Sunday night. Garrett, I'm not sure. He's not sure if he's getting to leave after AM service or after PM service, but if it's AM service, they'll be here also Sunday night, and if it's PM service, then they'll come part of the way and spend the night and come in on Monday, and then next week, everybody's celebrating New Year's. We'll celebrate New Year's, but it'll also be Christmas part 2 for us. So
yeah. Well, that's good.
We're blessed to still have our parents with us. So Christmas Eve, we always go and do with her mom and daddy and my mom and daddy, and of course it'll just be Melody, Gannon, and I. And then Christmas Day, we'll wake up and do Santa Claus, and then we'll fix something good to eat, and then Christmas night we'll do some more presents from each other, and we try to drag it out and spread it out as much as possible. You know, I know some people get up on Christmas morning and just open up everything, but we try to spread it out as much as we can. So extend the pleasure.
Yeah, well, we will get up on Christmas morning. We're going to my wife's family on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas morning we'll have, of course, at the house, and then head over to my family, and we will do some stuff there, and so that'll be a lot of fun. And my grandmother's pretty excited about it. You know, this is first holiday season without Papa here, and so she's a trooper, making it and doing well, and so it'll be good to have everybody together again. Thanksgiving was big because that's the day after his birthday, and so this one, you know, is what it is. But we're gonna have a lot of fun and you know, just hang out, and then the boys and I typically go see a movie after or Christmas night. We've done that for a long time. Thanksgiving is going hunting, and then Christmas is going to see a movie, and we just have done that. I don't know why, but so we'll do that and have a lot of fun with it. And so then we've got a couple of Thunder games to go to.
We're planning on doing some deer hunting and trying to line up a couple of duck hunts, and because they're going to be here like I said, they'll get here Sunday night. They won't have to leave until the next Saturday morning. So we're hoping that we can get in quite a bit of hunting during the week.
Yeah.
And just spend some time together. So,
well, no better way to spend your time than out in the field or in a blind.
That's right.
Man, good stuff right there.
Yep.
That's good stuff. Well, to all of our listeners and viewers, we hope that your Christmas will be just fantastic, and that you'll be able to spend some great time with your family. You know, the Lord has, you know, just really blessed all of us with family. And I realize that every situation is different, but, you know, one of the greatest things that I am thankful for is that we are a part of the Lord's family in Christ. And it's just a tremendous gift that we have been given the greatest decision and choice that we've ever been able to, have the opportunity to make. And so, whether if you are someone who doesn't have a whole lot of personal family, I guess would be the best way to say it. We hope that you understand that you have a church family, and we, if you're listening to this and you're not a Christian, you haven't obeyed the gospel, we'd love to be able to talk with you and help you to know how you can do that, because there is a great family that's waiting for you, and will love you and just be a great support for you. And so that's one of the things that I'm always thankful for. But everybody's focusing on Jesus this time of year, and some people fight against that. I'm all for it, and I'm glad, and I wish that it was this the whole year. And so I'm just thankful that we can be reminded of the great gift that we've been given, and move forward to our hope in heaven, man. That's good stuff.
Yep.
Well, we are, since it is Christmas this week, and as you're listening to it, it's Christmas today. And but as we prepare, we have Christmas shopping and other things that we are still doing. And so we're going to go ahead and jump into our study today, which is in Psalm 60. And so if you have a few minutes or you're driving down the road, you can, we want to share a few thoughts and do a quick study of Psalm 60, which is, again, another Psalm of David, as he is writing about, again, a lot of things that are going on in his life. The relationship aspect that we've said over and over again is here. And so another great Psalm of David is we consider what the blessed man looks like. And so, and please realize that when we say the blessed man, we're not talking about the male species, but we're talking about mankind, the blessed person, the faithfully obedient person, and somebody who looks to the Lord in their life. And that's one of the great things that I believe that David shows us throughout, what we've seen this season, the different times in his life. And so we're going to consider this, and we'll also be connecting this back to 2 Samuel chapter 8, verses 1 through 14, and where we have some things going on with the Philistines and such. And so we're going to, Corey, why don't you go ahead and introduce, as you typically do, this psalm, and then we will dive in and begin our study.
Well, you made the distinction about man and mankind, and it's also a good psalm to make the distinction, and we've tried to all along to talk about the blessed man doesn't mean, as we sometimes think of blessed, that you are receiving gifts or favors from the Lord. The word means really the idea of being in a right relationship with God, or being approved of by God. And Psalm 60 is a good reminder of that sometimes, even as God's people, we suffer defeat and we have problems and struggles and difficulties. And what we maybe are tempted to do in those times is to think that God has forgotten about us, that He didn't care about us or whatever. And that's could be the case in our day. It was the case in their day as well. But David has suffered a defeat, and there were some kings that he had fought against that I probably am. There's no way I could pronounce their name the way that they did anyway. But one of them is from the Mesopotamian area, and one is from between like Damascus and the Euphrates. But anyway, there's big defeat. And, David fought a lot of wars against some of the surrounding nations, and this was one where there was a defeat. And he's writing this psalm not only lamenting, and it is a lament psalm, not only lamenting the fact that he has had this defeat, but also asking God for help, because he's fixing to send the head of his army, Joab, and to try to go to battle, and he's asking God for his protection and help there. So, like all of the laments, it ends with some trust in God and some praise for God and what he is sure that God will do. One of the things important, I think, the ESV just says for instruction in the title of the psalm. I can't. Let me see here. Yours says a Miktam of David for instruction. So does or you may have the ESV. You do have the ESV up. But it says it's a Miktam of David for instruction. So he's written this psalm, probably a prayer that he prayed and that type of thing. But it's also something that he's written to be instructive of God's people. And that would include us even to this day, that while we're looking at this, to understand that sometimes, because of the world that we live in, sometimes things don't go the way we want. That doesn't mean that God's not sovereign, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about us, and it doesn't mean certainly that we shouldn't keep turning to him. So the way that I've got it broken apart may be different than others, but the way that I've got it broken apart is very evenly, verses 1 through 4, and of course at the end of verse 4 is another one of those selahs that always makes me want to at least consider making a break in the text there, because it has. But 1 through 4, God rejects David. I'm not saying that he has rejected David, of course, but that's what he thinks. In fact, he uses that word in verse 1. But so 1 through 4, God rejects David. 5 through 8, God answers David. He's going to call for him to in verse 5, and then God will speak starting in verse 6. And then verses 9 through 12, God delivers David. And so when we get to the last portion here, he's going to show that he's going to ask the question about who is going to help us if God doesn't, and then his trust that God is going to deliver him from this enemy that he's about to face through Joab. So it's also, let me say one more thing.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because the second 2/3 of the psalm, starting in verse 5, going down to the end of it, is almost word for word Psalm 108, 6 through 13. And Psalm 108, 6, let me just back up. Psalm 108 is also a short psalm. It has 13 verses. 5 through 12 here is 6 through 13 here. It's just got a little bit longer introduction into that section. But it's a praise, and it makes me, all we know about it is that it's a Psalm of David. It makes me wonder if maybe he wrote Psalm 60. I don't know this. This is my speculation. If he wrote Psalm 60 before Joab goes to battle, and then Psalm 108 was written after the victory, because he is praising God and thanking God in the first part of Psalm 108. So that's a little side note that you might want to try to connect some dots with. I don't know, but it is, like I said, almost word for word, the last 2/3 of this psalm to the last 2/3 of Psalm 108. So,
and you can see, just looking at verse 8, Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine, Ephraim also is the helmet of my head, Judah is my scepter. And when we go back to our text, that's exactly what verse 7 says. So, and I think we'll, it's not really linking it over there with some of this stuff, but that doesn't really mean anything. So, so we'll make sure and have that in the show notes, the breakdown and the titles with it, and We just kind of played around. We were playing around with logos before, and basically almost set up the same way as Corey has as well. So if you're somebody who does mess with logos and you're looking at that, that's you'll see it very, very similar to how Corey has it. So, Corey, I was looking. Here's the New American Standard and the ESV, and they both have that mictum of David there in this. I'm sure some probably.
Yeah. Notice the New American Standard says a mictum to teach. So that's the word that we would more commonly use, probably as teach rather than instruction.
Right.
But same idea is that he's writing this to help people understand. And I think that's kind of the big message of this, is to understand that, just because we love God and we follow God doesn't mean everything's always going to work out the way we want to exactly.
Yeah. And that's, once again, what's going on with David is real life stuff.
Yep.
And that's important that we note that the things that David's going through is real life stuff. It doesn't always go how we think that it should or how we would like for it to go. But that doesn't stop David's, the consistency of David's faith is there, and the up and the down. So that's really, really important for us to see as we pull out, the idea of the blessed man. And again, as we said before, to have a steady faith is really important. Never being too high, never being too low, but just understanding this is where I am, this is where I fit. I'm not above God, God's above me. This is the relationship. He's not going to leave me. I'm going to continue walking with him, following his ways. And so no matter what happens in my life, good, bad, or wherever, whatever in between, it's important for me to stay in that position. And that's not just something for David. That's something for all of us. So we definitely want to consider this for our own lives. No, we may not be battling the Philistines. We may not have lost a battle against the Philistines, but how many battles do we lose every day? How many battles are we in every day, with our own selves? The trials that we face, the temptation that we have, that's either put there in front of us or that we create for our own selves. It's always there. How many battles do we have with other people? Personalities and pride and jealousy and all that kind of stuff. All of these are battles that we face. Health battles, spiritual battles, you name it. It's all out there. So the concept of a battle in general, as we make application right off the bat before we read anything, is really, really spiritually important. David, he got through this, and he took every day as itself, and he made sure that, to stand in his faith and to stand with God. And if he was hurting, he went to God. If he was happy, he went to God. That's the characteristic of a blessed person. And so we're trying to learn that and apply it to our lives and be able to do something with that so that we can remain consistent in our faith as well. And so, I haven't highlighted everything here, and I'll do that as we discuss more. But, this psalm is no different from the others. It's still this relationship. There's a direction, and it's vertical, up and down. So very important.
And another thing about the title before we get into the actual text, it says it's according to Shushan Eduth. The ESV, I was looking at yours to see, the New American Standard doesn't translate that. It makes it sound like that's a person, and maybe it is, that brought back a report or something, I don't know, or copied the words or whatever, but it means lily of the testimony. So again, this is one of those that a lot of scholars believe is probably telling us the kind of the tune that it's supposed to be sung by. But the other thing to note, talks about Joab striking down his 12,000 in the Valley of Salt and all that. Mm-hmm. When you compare it to 2 Samuel 8, it's a little bit different sounding from what this title says to what is in 2 Samuel 8. So a couple possibilities. almost everybody links this back to 2 Samuel 8. It could be that really isn't where it's supposed to be linked to. Maybe we're not told in the historical record where this actually happened, and it's just similar to 2 Samuel 8. Or, and I think this is probably the more likely possibility, that, nowhere in the Bible does it, outside of maybe Luke, talks about giving a chronological order of everything. But even Luke doesn't try to present himself as this is a complete historical document. Now, that's not to say that everything isn't historically accurate. It is, but they're telling a story and they're giving us the details that's necessary for the narrative that they're trying to help explain. Does that am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
So don't always get caught up on, like, I think it's 18,000 Edomites that David slew or something like that. And here it's Joab, 12,000. Well, how they figured all that, who knows? But if it's not, there's ways that you can think about that to make it all fit together. But there's nothing necessarily, we're the one linking it to 2 Samuel 8. So it doesn't mean that there's a contradiction is the point that I'm trying to make. So anyway.
Right.
I'll leave it at that and we can get on into the psalm itself. But
yeah. And the, like you said, with some of this, we're being told what we need to know.
That's right.
And, with the genealogies of whether it's in Matthew 1 or Luke 3, that's showing the promise fulfilled from Genesis 12, that God made Abraham. And so the things that we need to know, there's so much that we don't know.
That's right.
And
I preached from Genesis 5 last night, and that it's a genealogy that gets us from Adam to Noah.
Right.
And almost every one of those, it'll talk about how that they lived a certain amount of years, and then they had this particular son, and then he lived so many other years, and he had other sons and daughters, and he died, and the number of his days was whatever.
Right.
But all of these guys had other sons and daughters, and we don't know anything about, because it wasn't, not that they weren't important, but the narrative that he's trying to show is how we get from Adam to the next big event in human history that shows God's power and his sovereignty and the result of man's sin, and that's Noah and the flood. And so anyway, I didn't mean to get a sidetrack too far off that, but if somebody's doing some deep dive study, just understand that there's a little bit of difference in the way it's presented in 2 Samuel 8 as to Psalm 60, but the Bible doesn't link those together necessarily as much as men do. But even if it is the same event, which I think that it is, there's ways of looking at it, but anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Well, and, you can even consider the time that it was written and the things that were being thought about. I mean, there's a lot of context of all that kind of stuff as well. So, all that needs to be considered. So, these are all things. There's so many things that Corey and I may mention in our study and our conversation together that are great side studies. And this is what's so great about the Bible is it's not just something. I mean, it's not like a book that you can go through and be like, okay, I got it. It's there. The Bible is so deep, and there are so many pathways and routes that you can, that you can follow and go down, and just like all the different numberings before the flood, what is the significance of all that? There's so much there, and I love it whenever you talk to a person who says, I've studied this passage for 20 years, and today I went through this passage and saw something brand new, and they're so excited because it's, and it just shows the depth of Scripture, that this is a good thing. It's a fun thing. It's an emotional thing. It's an educational thing. It's a spiritual thing. There's so many things wrapped up in the study of the text that you know, is just wonderful, and that's one reason why I love to study the Bible, and hopefully we're able to share some of that passion with you. So, but to get back on track with Psalm 60, and I'll put all of these in the show notes, even with some definitions or maybe even some information about each of these things, so you can have those for yourself. Let's go ahead and start out with that first section, Corey. We've got the first section, which is 1 through 4. God rejects David is how you have labeled that. And here's what it says. It says, "O God, you have rejected us. You have broken us. You have been angry. Oh, restore us. You have made the land quake. You have split it open. Heal its branches, for its totters. You have made your people experience hardship. You have given us wine to drink that makes us stagger. You have given a banner to those who fear you, that it may be displayed because of the truth." And then the Selah makes complete sense after, which is, of course, the pause. It makes complete sense after, all of these statements. And so this is all about everything that David is saying you have done. This is the rejection that David feels, and he's laying it all out there.
Yeah, and understand, all of this language is language that is typically used to talk about, God's reaction to mankind's sin. So there's nowhere in 2 Samuel 8, which again might be an argument that this doesn't necessarily link back to 2 Samuel 8, but I don't have any problem connecting it there. There's nothing in 2 Samuel 8 that says anything about any sin. In fact, it comes right after David and God, this covenant that God makes with David, that you start into 2 Samuel 8, and we're going to talk about all of David's victories, but it starts off with this defeat to begin with. So, but as we've talked about all along, what you're reading in the Psalms is the way he feels. I don't know that the defeat happened because usually when God's angry, it's because they've sinned, and then he asks them to restore them, which would also indicate that there's been sinned. Down in verse 3, you've given us wine to drink that made us stagger. Well, that's a lot of the times the way that God's wrath, in the book of Psalms and in the prophets especially, God's wrath is consumed as a cup to be drank, a cup of wine or whatever. So there's just a lot of language that makes us think at least David believes that why they fell was because of sin. And maybe that's the case, but there's nothing in the text that would indicate necessarily that that's what's going on.
Yeah. It was highlighted.
And then verse 4, of course, the idea of restoring us in verse 1, but in verse 4, you set up a banner. That's the flags that the military would hold up in front of them to get, we're going to follow that. So the idea that he's kind of saying is if we would turn back to you and follow you, then we'd be okay. And then the Selah to stop and think about that. But again, I don't know that this is the way David feels, but maybe that's not what's actually happened here. Maybe it's something else going on. So
yeah. Well, there's definitely something to think about with this, with these few verses here, and laying it all out there. You have, and of course, there's all kinds of stuff here that as he's describing, how he feels about God and what he's doing, and ultimately, that's who he's upset with, and that's how he feels. And I don't think that it's wrong. There are people out here, that I've talked to, and I'm sure you've talked to, and I've even felt this way, that feel that you can't say what you really want to say to God. I do not agree with that at all. That is something you yourself have come up with. A real relationship needs to be filled with real conversation. It needs to be filled with real feelings. Now, there are some things you probably should not say. I mean, let's understand who you're talking to. But at the same time, how you feel is how you feel. When we read in 1 Peter 5, cast all of your anxieties on him because he cares for you. All. That's important. Everything that you're feeling, whatever's going on. If you're upset, share what you're upset about and lay it on him. And don't feel bad about that. He's got big shoulders. That's what he wants from you, is to be able to have real prayers and share real feelings with him. So we really do, as a faithful people, need to get over the I've got to pray in this way mentality, and I have to say these types of words. If that's not the real version of you, is God really interested in hearing what you have to say? If you're going to present your fake self to him, we can do that in our church buildings. We can do that in our community. You'll never be able to do that with God. Again, that's only fooling yourself. That's making yourself feel better. And one thing that I have thought about a lot, and I'm going to admittedly take this slightly out of context, but I'll tell you why. And it's 2 Corinthians chapter 10. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. I believe it's verse 12. Yeah. So here's what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 10. For we are not bold to class or compare ourselves with some of those who commend themselves. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they're without understanding. So here, Paul is contextually discussing the false teachers, the peddlers, as he calls them earlier in the book, and what they're doing. They're letters of commendation. They're relying on themselves. They think their measure is of themselves. That's who contextually he's discussing here. However, it's the last part, and I actually talked about this in my sermon yesterday afternoon. The part that I want to use by way of application is this. It's the last part. Some of those who commend themselves, but when they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they're without understanding. So if you are only trusting in you and you're measuring spirituality by you, and this is not creating a good situation for you from a spiritual perspective. We have got to begin measuring ourselves with God, with Christ, by his text, and realizing where we are. When Paul learned that he had to put all of his trust in the Lord, we've talked about David learning he had to put all of his trust in the Lord. We find Jesus in his life putting all of his trust in the Lord, 1 Peter 2. That's what we have to do, and we can't be the measuring stick for ourselves. We've got to make sure that Scripture is guiding us in that direction. And this is one of those perfect places that we're able to read that David trusts in God, but David's upset. And he's saying a few things that he needs to say.
Yeah, and like in verse 3, he says, you have made all these, you mentioned the you have, but we don't know that God did.
Right.
It's kind of like in the book of Job where Job and the three friends know what God did and know what God didn't do and all, but he didn't. Of course, they don't have access to chapters 1 and 2 like we do to know what's going on, but we make assumptions sometimes that God did that, and maybe God did, I don't know, but David's making some assumptions here, perhaps, that he thinks that their defeat was caused by God, when maybe it wasn't, and we got to be very careful. We don't know what God's doing. We're seeing the the Hebrew scriptures are we call it the Old Testament, but the Hebrew scriptures are the Hebrew scriptures because they're given to the Hebrew people with the, who knows what God was trying to do in the lives and the countries outside of Israel. I mean, he's still sovereign over all of them as well, you know. So anyway, it's kind of like whenever at the end of a ball game, I know I hate to bring up bad things, but I know Oklahoma suffered a heartbreaking defeat. But you know, you get to the end of it, and now look, you can tell by looking at the background here, I'm a Tennessee fan. I don't like Oklahoma football, and I don't like Alabama football. There's, you know, one of those I like less than the other. But as far as the states themselves, Alabama and Oklahoma are two pretty godly states, relatively speaking, and you know, whatever. So Alabama beats Oklahoma, and this is not in any way. I'm glad that athletes do this, but you always have these athletes that, whatever it is, we win a Super Bowl or win the NBA championship. I want to thank the Lord who helped us to win or whatever. So, you know, he cared more about you than the other one. Well, not necessarily, you know. Their mindset was if we lose, it's because God's mad at us, and if we win, God's helping us. But there's another side of that coin too, that God's not just the God of Israel, God's the God of everything. And, you know, so anyway, my point being is that I don't know why they lost the battle that they lost. David thinks he knows. But again, remember in the Psalms, what we're getting very often is the way that they feel. This is their honest evaluation of, but it's not necessarily, kind of like in Job, it's not necessarily what's going on, it's what they think is going on. So, but it goes back to your point that God's okay with us telling what we think, even if we're wrong. God's, you know, and there's been times I've prayed, I know I'm wrong for thinking this, Lord, or I know I'm wrong, but here's what I'm really thinking, you know, and so help me to think better, you know, but anyway.
Well, you know, some of that's part of growth. Some of that's just, like you said, it's emotion, it's perception, it's all those things. And, you know, Job is a beautiful story. It's an awesome story. If you haven't studied Job, do it. Because, you know, how Job feels is, in many ways, is what Job shares. And he doesn't have the greatest support system around him during this time that he's really struggling. And so, you know, he's got a lot of questions, and naturally so. And there are times in our life that we've got a lot of questions, and naturally so. And so if we're not careful, our minds can produce a, you know, perception of reality just like everybody else can around us. And so when we're trying to understand what's going on and why, it can become easy for people to think, my situation is the way it is because God is upset with me. And that's what a lot of the case of what the friends were sharing. This is your fault. And you want to talk about real conversations that hurt. You've got friends saying, this is your fault. You're the reason why your family's dead. You're the reason why you lost everything because of your sin. Man.
Talk about friends in low places.
Talk about friends in low places. That's right. And that's, you know, I'm not saying that everybody's going to go through that situation, but don't you think that creates a perception in your mind that you're sitting there going, okay, is this a real deal? Well, there are situations in life that we can go through, maybe not to that extent, but certainly, you know, they can lead us in that same place. And again, having that healthy spiritual level, if you will, can help us to get through that. So let's move on to our second section here, verses 5-8. God answers David, where we read that your beloved may be delivered. Save with your right hand and answer us. God has spoken in his holiness. I will exalt. I will portion out Shechem and measure out the valley of Succoth. Gilead is mine and Manasseh is mine. Ephraim is also the helmet of my head. Judah is my scepter. Moab is my wash bowl, and over Edom I shall throw my shoe. Shout loud, O Philistia, because of me. And so this is the second part. And of course, we connected that, saying that even reading some of it, this is exactly what we read in Psalm 108. I think this was verse 8 that we read that connected to verse 7. That it's exactly the same. So, which, again, like you said earlier, is pretty interesting how writing the same things in two different places. But again, same type of feeling that he has.
Yeah. And what? You're talking about Logos and how it's got it divided up with 5 and 4, which I understand they're putting together all of what David says in those first 5 verses, and then starting in verse 6, what God is saying. But again, I like to divide it there between 4 and 5 because that's Selah, number 1. Number 2, because verses 1 through 4 is him pouring out his heart about how that he feels God has abandoned him. And then verse 5, he turns to God with the feelings of abandonment and problems that he's facing. And he says, I need an answer for this. And so verse 6, God has spoken. And what God does is he reminds him of, like, typically, Hebrew storytelling is, let's go through the history of Israel and connect that to what we're going through right now. And you see that all through the Old Testament. Joshua does it all the way up to before Stephen is stoned. He does it, But it's a reminder to remember how God is always taking care of them. And so what he's talking about here is how that I gave you the land. I divided up the land like I told you that I would. Basically, 3 of the biggest enemies that they had, the Moabites, the Edomites, and the Philistines, I took care of all them. Moab is my wash basin. Nothing. Upon Edom, I cast my shoe, which was a really bad thing back then. Remember when, was it George W. Bush that was over in the Middle East and somebody threw their sandal at him or something?
It was Junior, I think.
Yeah, George W. Bush.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then over Philistia, all of these I've taken care of. It's not like suddenly I become weak and I can't help you with your enemies. My history is I take care of you, so don't worry about it. Who's going to overtake me? Nobody, because all of your worst of the worst enemies, I've taken care of. So I'm going to now as well.
Yeah. Well, starting off right there in verse 5, that your beloved may be delivered. It's so fitting, for words like this to be used. God is the deliverer, and he's delivered his people from, all kinds of things and other nations, and will continue to do so. And so, to have that mindset that he is the ruler of all nations, he is the king of all kings, and ultimately will have the army of all armies if the case calls for it, as we have seen in the book of Judges and elsewhere. So, pretty awesome to have God on your side and for him to rule in this way and overcome in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's what I've always done. So that we may be delivered, give salvation and answer us. And God's like, out of his holiness or out of his holy place, God is saying, okay, haven't I always done that? Isn't that always been the case? Why?
Yeah.
Don't doubt me now, And so anyway, answer me. Well, the answer is the same answer it's always been. So.
Yeah. I love that phrase. Don't doubt me now.
Yeah.
He has proven over and over again throughout time that he will do what he says he's going to do. Do what he says he's going to do. That he's going to deliver the faithful. That he's going to provide the ways of opportunity. If you think about all the crazy things that he has done for his people, Why would you think anything different now? And that's why I believe it's so important to realize the God of creation, the God of Israel, is the same God that we have today. He is no different. And to realize that he has not changed as the gods of the world have changed, God has not changed. And so, you can even see a little bit of, frustration with David, right? This answer us concept that we find so many times that David is writing about. We're praying, we want an answer. Save with your right hand and answer us. I love the exclamation right there. But ultimately he's going to answer in his own time. But this is also, patience is a real thing. That's why we don't pray for it. But patience is a real thing, and understanding that God works in his time, but he's going to work in the right way. He's going to do it when it should be done, which of course is not always on our time, how we want it. But he understands and he knows better. And so, understanding, and I think that's part of the putting your trust in him, is sometimes you just got to trust and wait. Trust and see. What I've done in the past is what I'm going to do now and what I'm going to do in the future. So just chill. And I think a lot of people just need to chill out in their life and their spiritual life when we get all out of whack and we get, all up in arms. Just chill out. God's got this. And that's the benefit. There are great benefits when we talk about, this being a lament psalm, and there's some prayer aspect to this, because of what David has said in those first 4 verses. Prayer does a lot for you. It's not just about talking to the Lord. It's about, you can feel better whenever you do that. You somehow, some way, you're able to gain strength from that connection. So prayer does a lot for you, and that's a sign of how you can show your trust and reliance on him. And of course, I will exalt, I will portion out. These are Judah is my scepter, Moab my wash bowl. He is ruler. Just consider him and let him work and wait for him. And again, that's a sign of what the blessed man will do in their life, is to wait for God. Don't jump ahead, but wait.
Yeah, and if you're through with 5 through 8, I want to transition us to 9 through 12.
Yes.
Because you're talking about being real in your prayers. Think about the progression of this psalm. David cried out to God, "You have rejected us. Mm-hmm. I need you to answer me." God answers me and says, "I'm going to take care of you." And how often do we say, "Well, if I could just get a sign, then I would believe." Or if God would just audibly speak to me, then I would know whatever. Yeah. God tells David, "I'm with you. Everything's okay." And notice what his response is. "Well, who's going to bring me to the fortified city? And who's going to lead me to Edom? Because you've rejected us, O God. Yeah. Do not go forth with our enemies." Sometimes, and he's going to go on, and I'll let you talk about all this, but he's going to go on to talk about the need for God's help. Ultimately, his trust in verse 12 that God is going to deliver them. But praying to God doesn't make us always just feel better or answer the problem, or the problem is still there. Yeah. Like if I've got cancer, I can get down and pray to God. When I get up, I may still have cancer, mm-hmm. And I may still not know how but he can still be honest with God and say, I don't know how this is going to work out. It still feels like you've rejected us. It still feels like I'm all alone. But I'm going to trust you, and I know we're going to be victorious because you say we are, but I don't see how it's going to happen right now. I just really don't. And he's just being honest with God. And again, I think there's 2 big things there about that. Number one is that, we don't, just because we pray to God doesn't mean we automatically get the answer that we want, like we want, when we want, all of those kind of things. It doesn't mean that faith doesn't mean that we're suddenly going to feel better, that we're not going to have depression or anxiety or whatever. But it's just in the midst of that, being able to give that to God and saying, okay, I don't know, I still feel the way that I feel, but I'm going to make my mind, one of the things that I've been studying a lot about lately, how many times that God tells us things like in 1 John chapter 3, he says, see what manner of love. He didn't say feel what manner of love. Our emotions are good. God gave them to us, but sometimes they can be deceitful. So there's some things you need to know, that even when your emotions are turned upside down, that you still got that concrete foundation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's a couple of big lessons from this. And then that's why I think, like in Psalm 108, it's after the fact. And in that psalm, it's the same kind of stuff with the answer of God, but yet it's all about, I'm praising God because it did work out. Guess what? What God said, he meant, and he was faithful in it, Yeah. But I just think it's such a contrast. Answer me, God. God answers him, and then the next thing he says, well, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, that's the human component, right? I mean, you brought up, cancer and whether it's yours or somebody else's, maybe it's a great financial struggle. I don't know. You think about all the hardships a person may go through. The one component of a lot of those is fear. When a person gets cancer, they experience fear. When a person goes through a great time of financial struggle, they experience fear. When a person, I don't know, just off the top of my head, there's so many things that, you could, when something, terrible happens, something crazy happens where there's an element of the unknown, people experience fear. I think that probably to an extent, this is what David's feeling. This is why he's asking these questions. Where am I going? How am I going to get there? Who's going to lead me? I don't know what to do. When you really think about the hard times of life, you're generally sitting back, whether you say it or not, sitting there going, I don't know what to do. And I think that, I know that for a lot of people, right, that we read about within the text, when Abram is told to go to sojourn in another country, he stops it, he leaves, and he goes. Don't you think, though, from a real perspective, he's sitting there going, but I don't really know what to do. What about Noah? Build this ark and it's going to rain. Okay, I'm going to follow you, but I really don't know what to do. Joshua takes the people into the land, and they're going to take all these people. Yeah, all right, that's fine. I really don't know what to do. We look at these people and we say, oh man, these are men of faith. These are great men of faith. They were told to do it. They did it, and they didn't care why. That is bogus. Like, that is not even true. It can't be true, because you and I would never feel that way. No. The reason that their faith is so powerful is because even whenever they were sitting there going, I don't know what to do, they stepped forward with God, going into something they didn't know the outcome of, and they did it because their full trust was in God. And that's the whole point. That is why I think that the garden scene with Jesus is so powerful. Right. People look at Christ and they say, all right, well, this is Christ, this is Jesus. He knows exactly what's going to happen. He knows exactly how it's going to happen. Do you really think that he knew all of that stuff? Well, he's God. Okay, well, I'll give you that. I'll give you that argument. He is God. But Jesus was man. And that's where this is so awesome, is because Jesus wanted another way. Mm-hmm. If he was God, and that was only God, and he didn't experience things as a man, then he would have said, let's go. There would have been no prayer. Let's go do this and get it over with. Let's get it done. That's why I'm here. But he was a man. If there's any other way, please, let's do that. There's an element of fear and anxiety and worry when you go through severe times of trial. And when you go through that severe time of trial, there's something to be said about a person who fears God more than they fear the situation. So true faith is being able to walk into the shadow where you don't know what's going to happen. And this is not, I don't know that, and maybe it is, maybe it's like a 50-50 thing, right? I don't know that David is just sitting there going, doubting God. Well, who's going to do it, right? This could be a half and half. Like from one perspective, he's frustrated. From another perspective, the dude's got a little bit of fear in his heart and he's going, well, who's going to do this? This is God. This is the way God is reminding him, well, I'm going to do it. So the human side of things is a very real thing. The human perspective, the emotion that a person feels is very powerful. And this is why prayer is one of those really important things, because it is almost kind of the first step to putting your full trust in the Lord and allowing him to lead life. And, how he starts here, who will do this, who will do that. And then he's like, Lord, give us help, deliver us, So there's a internal battle that is going on, I think, in his heart and mind, and I think would be us too. So I don't know. You may or may not agree with that, but
yeah, it's kind of like I can't remember exactly the old John Wayne quote: "The courage is not the absence of fear; it's saddling up anyway," or something like that. Well, faith is not the absence of, or faith is not having all the answers, but it's saddling up and going anyway. It's a realization that I don't know all the answers, but I know the one who does, and I'm just going to do what he says,
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you read in Hebrews 11 about Abraham offering Isaac, you find out that the reason why he offered Isaac was because he knew what God could do with him. He knew he could raise Isaac from the dead. Now, would he?
Which is crazy because there's no, up to that point, in the text at least, there's no record of God ever raising anyone from the dead.
No. But Abraham knew that he had the power to do it.
Yeah.
Do with it what you will.
And in Hebrews 11, as Dan always points out, it probably should be by faithfulness. It didn't mean that they had all the answers again. It just means we're going to be faithful to him. Even, like you said, build an ark. Well, I don't know what this is going to do or why I need it, but I'm going to be faithful to God. Sacrifice your son. I don't know exactly how this is going to work out, but I'm going to be faithful because I figure he can raise him from the dead if he needs to, whatever. But
yeah. Well, it seems that verse 10 is maybe the fear statement. Have not you yourself, O God, rejected us, and will you not go forth with our armies, O God? So it's almost in his life, he feels like God's going to be absent. He's rejected us. He's not with us. And again, goes back to that, we lost the battle. Therefore, there's a reason for that. And going back to the Job concept as well, people, and even I before, at one point I thought, well, Job is just, teaching us how to suffer. There's definitely an element to that. But I think that one of the biggest things that we learn about in Job is that there's one relationship in Job's life that matters the most, and he fears that he lost it. And, the same type of concept, is God going to be absent in this, is a fear that it seems that David has. So, give us help against the adversary, for deliverance by man is in vain, though through God we shall do valiantly, and it is he who will tread down our adversary. So he knows what God can do, but there's still fear, are you not going to be with us? And so it's kind of this teeter-totter type of...
but it's interesting. You're in the New American Standard, verse 10, it says, and will you not go forth with our armies, O God? In the ESV, he says, you do not go forth, O God, with our armies. So the teeter-totter, in the ESV is between verse 10 and 11.
Yeah.
And I think probably there's not, I was looking in the Hebrew to see if there's not anything that would indicate it's an interrogative there. I think the New American Standard is wanting him to say,
Right.
I think the parallelism there is verse 10, first part of that verse, you've rejected us. Verse 10, part B, you don't go forth with us, So he's still struggling, like you said. There's a teeter-tottering back. But again, he's just being open and honest with God. Yeah. And even in like the first 4 verses, it's, I think God has rejected us. But the last 4 verses, I think it's, all right, I still think you've rejected us, but I know you're the one that's going to take care of us. And that's the hard part to get to. But David is a good example that we can do that. And part of the way is by not turning away from God, but even when we feel like we've been rejected by God, going back to him and working it out with God on our side.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the battle that, again, everybody goes through. It may not be, this exact situation, but it's a battle that everybody has. The Bible connects with your life, and this is a great way that shows it. You know where things are heading, you know how things seem, but you also know that God is the deliverer, he's the sustainer of life, he's your source of comfort, he's your courage, he's everything that you need. So to sit back, even in a bad situation, and rely on him is not easy. And your emotions can try to get the best of you, and to where you're going back and forth, just like David is. But ultimately, the entitled this trial to triumph, I think, at the end here, there's definitely a realization. I know what it seems like. I know how I feel, but I also know what's true.
That's right.
And if I know what's true, then I can rely on that truth even in my emotional struggle. So the battle that the flesh has with the spirit, from that perspective, is a real thing. I'm not talking about the spiritual warfare in Ephesians, or I'm just talking about you and yourself, that you're really battling those two things. That can be a hard thing, and there's a reason you can call a spiritually mature person a spiritually mature person. And it's because they're battle tested and they figured out some things through their struggle, and that has kind of honed them in and strengthened them throughout their life. And there's a reason why a spiritually immature person is known as a spiritually immature person, because they ain't got there yet. And so, if we were to look at Paul or David or any of those guys from beginning to end, you're looking at 2 different people, both, traveling toward the direction of God, but one has seen how God works and one hasn't just yet. And so in our lives, it's the same thing, right? It's just as David said, or you said earlier, remember what God has done and let that add some validation to your current situation. He hadn't changed. He's the same. He's going to continue fighting.
That's right. Yep. And letting the facts be what we latch onto and anchor to instead of our feelings sometimes is very important.
Yeah. What a great psalm that has some really great stuff, and it's just all real. It's all real. It's a recognition of God in your life, a recognition of your perspective of life and the struggle that you have, but ultimately a realization of God's presence and his and the stability that he can offer is really great. The more that you go through and you see the emotional struggle of all of these people, the the more real the Bible is, and the more you realize these aren't just fictional characters. These are real people that you and I would have done probably the same thing. And, yesterday I mentioned in my one of my lessons talking about, we kind of talked about this before, but in 2 Corinthians 7 about godly and worldly sorrow, and the two great examples that I used were Judas and Peter. Their sorrow began in the same place, but they took two different directions. And there are two people that I think that we oftentimes, maybe are a little bit hard on out of the apostles, and that's Judas and Thomas. We call Thomas Doubting Thomas, but we forget that Peter doubted Jesus more than Thomas did. And he doubted, saying basically the same thing before Thomas did anyway. So I think that we give him a hard time, and then we give Judas a hard time. Well, Judas is a great example of a person who really messed up. He really messed up, but was offered the same salvation that Peter was, because Peter denied him too. And in that situation, the difference between the two is that Judas did not have a godly type of sorrow, which leads to repentance and change, but he was holding on to worldly sorrow, which Paul says produces death. So while they both go through essentially the same type of situation, only one is fixated on what God can do for them. And, ultimately we have two different roads. Man, I feel terrible for Judas. I really do. I don't think that he's this bad, evil guy. He got caught up in some things, and ultimately, that's what got the best of him. Well, David could have done this a lot of times in his life. He could have taken on that worldly sorrow whenever he sinned. But, godly sorrow produces change. What I'm saying is that when a person recognizes God is with them and their focus is there, they have a better way out, a better way forward. And I think that's the direction that the blessed man takes. That's the direction that David took, which ultimately led to, we're studying about him, thousands of years later, saying, well, this is a man after God's own heart. Well, there's a reason why. And I think that we can all be that person too.
That's right. That is right.
Well, Corey, do you have anything else you want to add before we hop off of here? Man, I couldn't get my words out.
No, when Job had friends in low places, he sang the song a little differently.
Yeah.
Blame it all on my sandals. I get a situation I can't handle and ruined my white robe affair. My three friends were the last one to know, the last ones to show, and now they're here. They don't even act like they care.
I have a feeling that this is rhyming with another song.
Friends in Low Places. This is the original version.
Oh, well.
But I saw the surprise.
The fear in his eyes.
Look in your eyes.
I don't know that they have glasses of champagne.
When I scrape my sores with a piece of pottery.
Talk about a guy who is hard up, man.
Yep.
That's a power. Job is a very powerful story.
Yep.
Very powerful.
All right, I'm going to go write a Vacation Bible School song to the tune of Friends in Low Places.
Oh, brother.
About Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar.
If you can get those three to rhyme somehow, man, props to you. Props to you. And then what are you going to do with the... Oh, now I've gone blank on his name. The fourth friend at the end.
Elihu.
Yeah, Elihu. Yeah, that may or may not be real, but what are you going to do with him? The young guy who sat back and had something to say.
I had a friend named Eliphaz. No compassion he has. He made fun of me down to my name. A friend named Bildad.
Oh, brother.
Thought I was a bad dad. And he cursed me just the same. I had a friend named Zophar. His friendship didn't go very far. But at least I could see his face. But that sorry Elihu, about as didn't know really what to do. I'd love for him and me to change place.
Oh, man. Oh. Wouldn't it be crazy if we had all of like the same names that they did back then? I mean, this could be the show between Mephibosheth and Zophar.
Well, you know,
now we would think that those are like, space
the gainsayings of
type
Corey
movie
is in
names.
there.
Uh-huh.
The gainsayings of Corey is in there, you know. We actually have a young lady just recently got out of school whose name is Cora, and I was telling her yesterday that I was hoping that she had a bunch of boys when she got married so that I could call them the sons of Cora. But she didn't think that was as funny as I did. But
oh, man.
But
well,
yeah, I could be the gainsayings of Corey is in there, of course, but you could be I'm trying to think of a good G Bible name that we don't use anymore. I don't know. It'll come to me later. Gamaliel and
Goliath. I don't
know if
neither
that's the
one of
name I
those
would
work
want.
out really well. They're both on the wrong side.
No.
No.
Anyway.
Gad. That one really didn't work out either. So, what are you going to do?
I don't know.
Well,
Merry Christmas.
yes. Merry Christmas. Thank you for tuning in with us on this Christmas day or even after.
May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.
It's not going to be that way in Oklahoma. It's going to be like 70-something degrees here.
Same in Tennessee.
What a bummer. Well,
Yeah.
is what it is, man. That is what it
Yeah,
is. We're in the wrong part of the world if you're wanting snow. So, of course, we would just get ice generally. But
Yeah.
either way, whether you have a white,
There's a really. Do you know Nate Brigatesy? You know who he is?
I know who he
Funny-
is. Yes, the comedian.
Funny comedian
Yes.
from here in Tennessee
Yeah.
that is clean for the most part. He's got a good movie, it looks like, coming out next year. But anyway, he does this little skit with he's an angel and he's there at the birth of Jesus, and the wise men are there and the shepherds are there, and he's talking about, how one day they're going to write lots of songs about all of you. They'll write songs about you, Mary, and about you, wise men, and about you, shepherds. And Joseph says, and me? And he goes, they'll write lots of songs. And
Yeah.
and they said and he said, well, mostly they'll be written about things that happen that has snow and Nordic events involved with them. And they said, but that's nothing like what's going on right now. And he said, I know, but that's just the way it'll be. So anyway.
Yeah. I've watched a few of his things. I watched one of his specials. Pretty good. So
He's pretty funny.
hilarious. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
All right, well, Merry Christmas to you and yours. Hope y'all have a good one.
yeah, you too, and all of our viewers and listeners have a great Christmas. We're grateful for you tuning in with us each week, and we do ask that you please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, whether it's on YouTube or a podcast. We're trying to grow the podcast. And of course, we have a great lineup of podcasts and a couple that we're working on adding on to the family of podcasts on the ExcelPod network. So be sure and check that out and subscribe to them and help us to grow in every way. We do want to, as a Christmas present, if you will like and share, for the first 5 people who will like and share this this podcast, whether it's on YouTube or whatnot, we want to connect with you and send you a free copy of the Romans 1 through 8 workshop series that we have done. And we'll send those to you as a Christmas present for sharing this, and we'll connect with you and figure out how we can get that to you. So make sure and like and share so we can get that to you. That'll be really, really cool. So again, thank you for tuning in with us today. We hope that the Lord will continue to bless you in your daily walk with Him. Put all of your trust and faith in Him. He is the deliverer of our souls, and there's no better way than to go with God. So until
before you close, this is the last before the new year. So if you're out there needing a tax deduction, Garrett won't ask you, but I will. Need to support Excel Still More and Garrett's work in it. So if you'd like to find out more information about that, he may cut this out when he edits the video, but I hope he does not. He did not ask me to do this, but I'm doing it because I think that you ought to. So it's a tax deduction. That's the least of all the reasons why you ought to, but that's one more extra bonus. But you can go to the website or you can contact Garrett, and I'm sure he can tell you how that you can support this work financially.
Yeah, that would be great. We've got a lot of stuff that we're doing, some really cool things that are coming out. We've got the Excel Still More Bible Workshop in January. We're just a month away from that. So if you have any interest in coming, join us. Romans 9 through 16 is going to be a great study together at the O'Connor Resort in Oklahoma City. But we would love for you to support the work of Excel Still More, which helps us to grow and do more things and provide content like this for you. So, Corey, I love you. I appreciate you, my friend. We love all you tuning in with us. And keep walking with the Lord, and we will, Lord willing, see you or be able to record something for you next week. And so until next time, we hope that you will stay untied.